Hi guys, Gareth here and welcome to this Frino Plonk production. So in this video I'm going to be talking about my educational history. So as I knock on the door of 30, I've literally just realised it's been 10 years since I was in education. Also, I've just been watching a video from Sable Court, who is somebody I used to watch quite often back in the day, so to speak, and she dropped out of university in 2010. I actually dropped out of education in 2009. It was 2009. I dropped out of education, and in this video I'm going to be explaining what my history of education was, and you may be surprised about a few things. Before I go any further, and this may come across as bragging or arrogance, but there's no other way around this. Among my peers, I'm considered intelligent, I'm considered humorous, quick-witted, or the type of things you would attribute to an intelligent individual, a knowledgeable individual. And most people do regard me as one who likes to seek out knowledge and one who likes to argue and debate with people in order to expand their own knowledge and understanding of things, almost to a fault. I actually am sometimes questioning to a fault, and it has resulted in arguments. Obviously, there are reasons why I'm mentioning all that, and this is kind of a follow-up to my other video I just did about wanting to read more, essentially. And this is where this video is essentially going, is that I'm going to be getting into H.P. Lovecraft. I want to read the Harry Potter books, and there's some other books I have in my collection that I haven't read that I really do want to get into reading. And there are some reasons why I've recently discovered that maybe reading could be for me. But anyway, on to the main subject of this video. So for reasons hopefully will become obvious later, I'm not going to, there are some parts of this video or this story I'm going to purposefully miss out for privacy's sake, for reasons I'm sure will become clear. So I went to 5 different junior schools. So I went to my local infant school and then went on to the junior school, to that infant school. And for reasons I'm not going to go into, I left at year 3, which is the first year of secondary school. Sorry about that, guys. That was a laptop hitting the deck. This is all going to be cleared very, very soon anyway. So yes, I left in the first year of junior school. I then proceeded to go to 5 or 4 other different junior schools. It was around this time I was diagnosed, I suppose you could say, with special needs. Nowadays, I think the correct term is behavioural needs, but it changes ever so often, and what the PC way of explaining that is changes. So what that basically means, behavioural special needs, basically means you can't exist in a mainstream school. A mainstream school is a school of 30 people per class, 200-300 students/pupils per school, blah blah blah, and you've got a teacher, maybe a helper in the class. Whereas the school I ended up at, the school I finally settled down in, which we'll talk about momentarily, had 2 LSAs, or learning support assistants, and then a teacher as well. So, and there were only 7 pupils/students per class, and a maximum of maybe 20 students to the whole school. And actually that will actually make sense later on in the story, when I start explaining a few things, or will become relevant. So a couple of those junior schools I went to did have special needs units within inside them, but they were mainly mainstream schools. And the whole point of those schools was to reintegrate you back into mainstream school. The problem with a couple of those schools, and one of the reasons why I'm mentioning those schools, is I was at odds with the teachers at those schools because they didn't understand me. They didn't understand why I was in special needs school, and they couldn't understand why I couldn't simply go back into mainstream school. And it simply was I couldn't cope. For whatever reason, I couldn't cope with mainstream school. So we then, in fact I was home tutored for a little bit as well. We then move on to year 6, which is the final year of junior school here in the UK. And I finally settled down in a school called Waterloo School. Finally settled down and finally got the respect and the respect, I suppose, I deserved from teachers. You know, the teachers actually wanted to teach me. The teachers wanted to help me out, all those sort of things. And I was there for only a year, and I went on to its secondary school, which is Waterside, and I was there for the rest of my school education. I then did go into further education, which we'll get on to momentarily. In Waterloo School, I gained my first, what I'd call best friend, and was very settled, very happy. I then went on to Waterside School. At this point, I will now state I was bullied throughout most of my school life up until a certain point, as we'll get into momentarily. So when I first started Waterside School as a secondary school, and I was bullied, I was a scrawny, undeveloped child, which we'll get on to momentarily. And as a result, I did not enjoy secondary school at all. We then found out that Waterside has a unit that is a far more condensed version of the main site, and as a result, and some of the problems I was having, I was sent to the unit, and then I was there for the rest of my secondary education. Now, when I went to the unit, I was actually looked after by a couple of year 10s there. When they were going to leave school, when they got to the end of year 11, I was actually quite worried. I was about to go into year 9 at that point, which is about the halfway point in secondary school here in the UK, and I was getting quite worried about what's going to happen forward, because of course the year 10s and 11s are leaving, or the year 10 and 11s that were looking after me were leaving. What's going to happen? Well, as I just stated earlier, there are maybe 20 children in the school total, and there are about 5 to 7 pupils/students per class. When those year 11s left, the most senior year at that point was year 9. So I was actually, and one other person, was actually the most senior members or students/pupils in the school. We also got a new headmistress at the time. Again, I'm not going to say her name for privacy reasons. She came up with a, can't really think of the terminology right now, a system, I could say, and gave me and this other person a badge called a senior pupil badge. It essentially made us prefects. And what this essentially did is, in the 2 classes that we were, because there were 2 separate classes, we were the prefects. We were almost like another member of staff. And actually, over the years of being at that school, that came to very much fruition, and blah, blah, blah. I left that school. Funny enough, there was actually another position that opened up called the council. Student council position, which meant you actually got to go to our local town centre, to the Guild Hall, to actually sit on a meeting, a council meeting, to discuss with MPs and councillors about the future of education and special needs education, or special needs schools and stuff like that. I actually went into the headmistress's office and actually turned around and said, I'm actually going to preclude myself from being voted into that, simply because I'm already a senior pupil. And she actually turned around and said, that is a very big thing that you've done there. She actually turned around to me and said, you were the prime candidate for that position. She said that's an extremely I'm trying to think of the words. It's a really big thing to do, and I got a lot of respect for that. Then, as I was coming to the end of my time at secondary school, I actually went back into the headmistress's office and said, it's time for me to give back my senior pupil badge. She turned around to me and said, no, Gareth, I want you to keep the senior pupil badge. You'll be a senior pupil for the rest of your life, essentially. That meant something to me. That really did mean something to me. And as we'll get to momentarily, that was a badge of honour in a lot of ways, and I still have the badge in my room, and it's up on my shelf in a private place. So I don't mind saying at this point, I left school with 3 D's and an E. I left school with not very good GCSE results. Yet, as I said at the beginning of this video, I'm considered intelligent, quick-witted, all this kind of stuff. Something that actually became a problem, and it wasn't until I left my college, which is South Downs College, I'll say now, or reveal now, it wasn't until a particular lecturer took a shine to me that this was established. And what exactly was established was that I'm very articulate in voice, very articulate, and I can present myself, present thoughts, that sort of stuff. But on paper, that all goes to hell. So, as I've just discussed, I left Waterside with 4 D's and an E and went to South Downs College. I studied first diploma animal care, and then studied national diploma animal management. I was there for 3 years in total. The first few months and the first year of being at the college wasn't my best, to be honest. I was bullied. Again, I was bullied by a very specific person in my class. I'm not going to name, but I was bullied, and I was not happy, particularly. Somebody who, again, I'm not going to name for privacy reasons, took me under her wing and actually fought back against this bully, along with another friend of hers, and I then began to love college. That person is no longer with us. She died a few years back. Her liver packed up. She had various forms of cancer over the years. She was diagnosed with melanoma. That went away. She was then diagnosed with liver cancer. That went away, and she finally died a couple of years back. Her body packed up, essentially. Her body could do no more fighting. She was undeveloped at birth, and she passed away. That hit me quite hard, to be completely honest. The person who fought back from the bully at college is no longer with us. Anyway, moving on to more positive things. I then go into my second year of college, which for me was completely brand new to a certain extent. There was only one person who followed me into my class that I was in, and I hung around with her and her group of friends. However, a couple of those members were a bit incredulous towards me. They didn't exactly welcome me with open arms. I then met up with two friends who I am going to name on camera because they're still good friends to this day, Megan and Katie. Megan actually started speaking to me, and then Megan had made friends with Katie because Katie was actually bullied in our class. She made friends with Katie, and then sort of said to me, do you want to become friends with us, or do you want to be part of our friend group? Because they could see some people being incredulous. Now, as I stated previously, I'd gone from my first diploma into my national diploma because I was known by some of the people in the college at that point. And our tutor for the previous year, the tutor for the national diploma was actually the faculty manager, if you will. She was actually the faculty manager. The reasons why I'm saying all of this, and I was actually one of the bright ones, as I've been saying throughout this video, I was one of the bright ones. I was quick to answer questions. I was quick to get stuck in with answering questions and interacting with the lecturer and stuff like that. So as a result, as soon as other people saw that I was now part of, and also I was outspoken, I was very outspoken. As soon as people saw that I was part of Megan and Katie's friend group, they severely backed off from Katie. In fact, there was one person who used to hang out with that friend group who I had an altercation with, who then parted ways because she didn't like the fact of how outspoken and how how outspoken, I'm not going to go any more than that than I am, essentially. 2 seconds. So, yes. So when that happened, people backed off of Katie, and you know, the friend group was what it was. And then I thoroughly enjoyed the next 2 years at South Downs College. However, as I was beginning to leave, think about leaving South Downs College, or as it was coming to leaving time, I was in a spot of bother, shall we say, and had to drop a couple of subjects. Now, the way that our particular course worked is you had to have a certain amount of points to pass the course, and I had to drop a couple of subjects, which means I didn't get any points for those subjects whatsoever. The irony of it all is I didn't forget, but because a lecturer was ill, was off for a while, I couldn't submit, and I had a problem with my system, logging into the system at college. I couldn't submit my coursework for a particular subject. I actually left South Downs College with a pass merit. The best result is 3 distinctions. I left with a pass merit. I was 2 points away from a pass merit, and I kicking myself. I have been kicking myself ever since that I was that close to a pass merit. I didn't realise I was that close to that score. To say, for instance, I just thought I was going to leave with a pass, to be completely honest. But to be that close to, you know, pass merit was kind of funny in a lot of ways. Little did I know, but my first diploma actually helped towards some of that score, because the other person who was still at the college, again, I'm not going to mention her name for privacy reasons, she also got a higher score than she was expecting. She was having some problems because of her first diploma from the couple of years before that. Anyway, so I left there, and I'd actually decided to go into farrieing, which is horseshoeing, if you don't know what that is. So I went to Brinsbury College, just north of Chichester, here in the UK, to study blacksmithing. However, due to many reasons, I left there before the end of the course. I was very, very, very surprised. At one point in the post came my blacksmithing certificate. The reason why I was so surprised I got the blacksmithing certificate is because I feel I shouldn't deserve that blacksmithing certificate. Again, this is where me being a bright, knowledgeable, intelligent person in speaking in the way I present myself versus on paper has come to help me. So one of the lecturers actually phoned us at one point to say, Gareth, all your bits and bobs are still at the college if you want to come and collect them at one point, which I was on the phone. And I sort of said to this lecturer, hang on a minute, why have I got my blacksmithing certificate? Because I didn't do the final test, didn't do the final exam. And she turned around to me and said, me and the 2 other lecturers had a discussion, and we felt you exhibited enough knowledge and enough understanding of what we need for the course to get the qualification, which again means a lot to me. And again, it shows that, and one of the reasons why I'm doing this video is it's not all about what's down on paper, it's about how you present yourself within yourself, so to speak. I was then going to go into farrieing. However, because I'd already done so the way the education system works in the UK is that if you do a high-level course, and my national diploma was a level 3 course, you can only do one course that's lower than that level before you've got to pay to be in education. So to go into farrieing, which is a level 2 course, the blacksmith was a level 1 course, I'd have to pay. I would have to have paid £1,200 to stay in education. I didn't have £1,200. I did apply for bursaries and for loans, student loans, to be able to pay to stay in education, but I was declined from most people. Here in the UK, September is the cut-off. Well, actually, September's the start of the school term. So I was unable to get a bursary or a loan or some description, so I dropped out of education. Literally a week or two after the cut-off point, I got a letter through the post saying I'd been accepted for one of the bursaries. At that point, it was too little too late, to be completely honest, and I dropped out of education completely to focus on work, because I could then start taking more overtime and earning more money at work. So that's been a 20-minute video of my educational history. And as I said at the beginning of this video, one of the reasons why I wanted to do this video is to show people to a certain extent that even if you got really crappy qualifications throughout your educational career or life or whatever you call it, it's not the end of the world in any way, shape or form, and does not make you stupid in any way, shape or form. A lot of people, as I keep saying throughout this video, yes, it's going to come across as boasting or arrogance, but hey ho, as most people consider me intelligent. I can come up with good arguments. I can, I'm knowledgeable on a lot of subjects, and I take great pride and satisfaction in learning and discovering things and seeing how things work and stuff like that, which is why, most things that I research, I know so much about, because I don't just simply look at it and then go, I look thoroughly into it, if you know what I mean. I've also, over the years, been diagnosed with dyspraxia, which is a hand-eye coordination problems, which at this point in time I say I'm probably over. I still have dyspraxia, it doesn't go away, it just, I've coped with it and I've now overcome it, if you know what I mean. The reason why I stated at the beginning of this video I want to read more, and for a long time I've often considered myself not a reader. I'm not one that necessarily could go to one side and just sit in a book for ages. However, I've recently been discovering that I've been reading a lot more than I considered myself to read, if that makes any sense. I've never considered myself a reader until I actually take some time out of the day sometimes to read some short stories here and there on some particular sites. And I've actually begun to realise, hang on a minute, I actually quite like reading. Now, I often consider people who read intelligent, people who have very good vocabulary, and I often think I'm not intelligent enough to read, if that makes any sense. That's a stigma I've had for a long time now, to be completely honest, and it's a stigma I can push out of my mind. It's funny because I'm actually, for a lot of my school years, I was actually considered ahead of my years when it comes to reading, not so much with writing, but very much with reading. I can read actually quite fast. And as a result of that, as I stated at the very start of this video, I'm going to start reading some of the books I own. I own all the Harry Potter books. I own all of the Silence of the Lambs, Red Dragon series of books. So that's Red Dragon, Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal and Hannibal Rising. I own all those books. I own all the Twilight books somewhere. I own them somewhere. Whether I'll read those or not, I don't know. I also want to read some Terry Pratchett books, very much so. The Colour of Magic, and there's another book I want to read of his. And also H.P. Lovecraft, that's another series of stories I wish to read. There's another series that I want to read that a lot of people have said to me, it's a good reading material. Oh, maybe some Stephen King, but something else, I've forgotten what books or series of books they belong to. But oh yes, also I probably will read at some point the Fire and Ice series, which is of course Game of Thrones, that's based upon. Anyway guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully this inspires some people and gives you more of an understanding of where I've come from, where I am, where this has come now. And as I knock on the door of 30, I just thought, yeah, maybe it's sometimes to go back, reminisce, and talk about your educational life and where you are now. And the video from Sable Court, if I didn't speak about that earlier, I watched a video about somebody dropping out of college, university 2010, and it just sort of inspired me to do my own video. Anyway guys, you know the spiel: like, dislike, subscribe, bell icon, and I'll see you in the next video. Ta-ra.